Yes, so my comments are really kind of more my own puzzling over this. Why are we not hearing... So we talked a lot about the clash between the executive branch and future clash or ongoing clash with the courts. Why is Congress also not intervening more? First of all, Congress is controlled by the Republican Party, and so the question is, why aren't members of the Republican Party not intervening more? The very few insights I have for you. So one is, Trump right now is, first of all, he's a very smart politician, and so he's focusing on extremely popular goals to look like Professor Lawande said, who just left, to look efficient, look like he's doing something. So one goal, he wants to downsize a bloated federal government. I emphasize federal because local government, Americans love their local government, that's still okay. But we're seeing starting in the 90s, trusting federal government is pretty low and it's kind of trending downwards. There's good ethnography documenting that a core of starting with the Tea Party, a core of the Republican base, a subset, not everybody, is extremely resentful against civil servants. There's been good work on that, especially done in Wisconsin, right? Yeah. And you can understand their frustration because if you take a political science class, once a program exists, it's really hard to cut. So if you have a policy goal of cutting some spending, well, the status quo is in favor of quote-unquote pro-state liberal Democrats. And so you can grow some frustration. So not only do they want the opposite of what is, but what they want is really hard to achieve. And so maybe they might be willing to focus on the end and overlook the means. And so in that sense, the Republican base is not reacting that much, and maybe folks in your family, because this is a very, very popular policy goal. The other one is foreign aid. Yeah, USAID is the smartest move. In all survey data, I work on fiscal policy. Every time you ask someone, what should we do to balance the budget? Cut foreign aid, cut foreign aid, cut foreign aid, okay? So these are extremely popular moves, well chosen. President Trump is a really good politician. The other thing to think is that members of the Republican Party, usually when members of a party in Congress think about a policy, they think about backlash. To what extent, if I support this thing, will it come back to bite me? And so you have to ask, to what extent are these kind of feedback mechanisms, this fear of backlash, potentially not working right now for at least a subset of members of the Republican Party? So when does these backlash concerns happen is if people, members of Congress, members of the Republican Party here, fear that the policies they're associated with affect people who vote Republican and who happen to be spread pretty efficiently across the territory, such that it's going to potentially, come back to bite a bunch of members of the Republican Party in many districts. So in that sense, going after universities is very smart because it's in the data. Universities don't usually tend to have a host of people who vote Republican. There are exceptions, of course. And they tend to be in Democratic districts, right? So in that sense, they are going against groups where this feedback mechanism, where the fear of backlash is not as salient. The other thing is that you don't want to be, as a member of Congress, associated with a policy that has large effects, certain and traceable. And right now, it's such a mess that it's hard to understand even what's going on. And so in that sense, this other way in which usually members of Congress might knock on the door of the executive branch and go, hey, do you really want to be doing this right now? They're not active as, let's say, strongly as they could be. So that's this one short insight I wanted to share with you about why is it that we're not hearing members of Congress. It's one reason among many. We're going to talk about more reasons, so I'm going to pass the mic to the next speaker, Professor Hutchings, sorry.